Most people don't realize the last time they're watching someone is the last time. There's no warning, no farewell, no moment that tells you this is it. Life just keeps moving until one day it doesn't. And when it happens, the loss isn't only the person. It's the sudden collapse of the idea that you still had more time. She once spoke about happiness in a way that felt almost disarmingly simple, as if it were something fragile you learned to protect rather than something you chased. She said she was happy to be alive, happy to work, happy to spend her days surrounded by good people on good projects. There was no grand philosophy attached to the thought, no attempt to turn it into a lesson or a declaration. It was just an honest appreciation for being present, for being useful, for contributing something meaningful alongside people she respected. It sounded like the voice of someone who had found balance, not because life was easy, but because she had learned how to stand comfortably inside it. At the time, those words felt reassuring, even quietly hopeful. Now they linger differently, weighted by hindsight, carrying a gravity no one expected them to carry so soon. The end arrived without ceremony, without the warning signs people later wished they had noticed. It came quietly, wrapped in the kind of stillness that only reveals its cruelty after everything has already changed. Emergency responders were called when concern set in over her breathing, and help arrived as fast as it could. But there are moments when speed and effort are no match for what unfolds. There are moments when the world moves forward without waiting for permission. When confirmation came that she had passed away, it felt unreal, like a sentence spoken in the wrong room, attached to the wrong name. The explanation that followed was brief and carefully worded, almost distant in its restraint. A short illness. No further detail, no clarity that might ease the shock or give shape to the loss. Just a sudden finality, leaving behind unanswered questions and a silence that seemed to stretch outward in every direction. After news like this, memory begins to reorganize itself. The mind moves backward, replaying moments, searching for meaning in details that once felt insignificant. People remembered how she had quietly missed a major awards ceremony despite being nominated. At the time, it barely registered. There was no announcement, no explanation, no visible concern. It felt like a small absence in a busy season, the kind that slips by without notice. But absence changes after loss. It takes on new weight, new implication. What once seemed ordinary now feels like the first subtle shift, the first sign of a story turning in a direction no one saw coming. In retrospect, it feels like the opening line of an ending that was already being written. Her final public appearances, viewed in real time, carried no sense of farewell. She stood at award shows with her familiar poise, elegant, composed, unmistakably herself. There were quiet observations that she looked thinner, but nothing about her presence suggested withdrawal or fragility. She was still laughing with her cast, still celebrating collective victories, still immersed in the shared joy that comes from creative work done well. She looked at home in those moments, exactly where she belonged. That world, the constant movement of production, the closeness that forms under pressure, the exhaustion softened by triumph, had been part of her life for decades. She navigated it effortlessly, as though it were not a career but an extension of her identity. Most people don't realize the last time they're watching someone is the last time. There's no warning, no farewell, no moment that tells you this is it. Life just keeps moving until one day it doesn't. And when it happens, the loss isn't only the person, it's the sudden collapse of the idea that you still had more time. What deepened the shock was how full her life still appeared to be. She was actively working. Projects were unfolding. Scripts were being rehearsed, scenes planned, schedules filled with future dates. There were appearances still ahead of her, conversations waiting to be continued, work left unfinished. There was no sense of closure, no final bow disguised as routine. Everything pointed forward. Life seemed to be moving in its familiar rhythm, steady and purposeful, until it stopped without explanation. That collision, the forward momentum of a life still in motion meeting an abrupt and absolute end, is what makes the grief feel so sharp and disorienting. It feels incomplete, unresolved, like a story interrupted mid-thought. In the days that follow, what remains is not just sorrow, but a strange stillness where expectation used to live. The idea that she would appear again, on screen, on a stage, in another project, had always felt inevitable. Her presence had become something people unconsciously relied on, something steady and familiar. Now that expectation has nowhere to land. And in that space, the weight of her absence becomes clearer, not only in what was lost, but in how deeply she had woven herself into the lives and memories of those who watched her, worked with her, and loved her. The grief does not arrive all at once. It unfolds slowly, settling into the quiet realization that the world is moving forward without someone who felt, until now, like she would always be part of it. She had never been someone who dramatized her own struggles, and that instinct seemed woven into her long before the world ever learned her name. Even when she spoke about the rare condition she was born with, one that placed her major organs in reverse, rearranging her body in a way most people never experience, she approached it with humor instead of gravity, as though it were an interesting curiosity rather than something that demanded fear or explanation. She joked about not wanting to learn the full medical terminology just yet, laughed when recalling how doctors calmly explained that her heart sat on the opposite side of her chest, and shared her husband's reaction. Immediate disbelief softened by sarcasm, the kind that transforms concern into connection. The way she told the story made it clear she refused to let biology dictate her narrative. To her, it was simply another strange footnote in a life already filled with unlikely turns, odd coincidences, and moments that only became lighter once you learned to laugh at them. It wasn't avoidance, it was choice. A quiet decision to carry complexity without letting it become burden. When she was asked about what mattered most, her answers were never dressed in grandeur. She didn't speak about achievements, awards, or how she might be remembered. Those things existed, but they didn't seem to sit at the center of her world. Instead, she spoke about family, and the way she spoke made it clear that this wasn't a prepared response. It was instinct. She spoke about her husband, Beau, with whom she shared more than 3 decades of life, partnership, and steady companionship. She spoke about their sons, who grew up watching their mother move between public recognition and private normalcy with remarkable ease. To audiences, she was an icon, instantly recognizable, admired across generations. To her children, she was simply there, consistent, supportive, present in the quiet ways that matter most. In old footage, she stands beside them at premieres, answering questions with warmth, allowing them to speak freely, never redirecting attention back to herself. There is no performance in those moments, no assertion of status. Fame never seemed to interfere with her priorities. It remained something external, something she stepped into and out of, never something that defined the way she loved or lived. Her path into comedy began early, shaped by environments that demanded courage, awareness, and complete commitment. In the world of improv and sketch comedy, there is nowhere to hide. You either listen deeply, respond instinctively, and trust the moment, or you disappear into the background, forgotten as quickly as you appear. She didn't disappear. She stood out. Her instincts were sharp in a way that felt almost intuitive, her timing precise without ever seeming calculated. She was fearless in her willingness to commit fully, to take risks without apology, and to follow a character wherever it led. Even in her most exaggerated performances, there was always something grounded beneath the surface, a recognizable human truth that anchored the absurdity. That rare balance, the ability to live comfortably between chaos and clarity, became her signature, something audiences could feel even when they couldn't articulate why it worked so well. As her career moved into film, that balance followed her naturally, almost effortlessly. She never chased roles that polished away rough edges or turned her into something distant and untouchable. Instead, she gravitated toward characters who were flawed, misdirected, intense, and often hilariously unaware of themselves. She found comedy in insecurity, depth in confusion, and humanity in excess. When she delivered her breakout performance as an eccentric, self-serious artist with more confidence than direction, audiences didn't just laugh and move on, they remembered her. The character lingered. The performance stayed. She committed without vanity, without fear of looking strange or unlikable, and that commitment transformed the role into something iconic. It was the kind of performance that didn't simply open doors, it rewrote the path ahead of her entirely. That single project reshaped her career and her personal life, introducing her to wider recognition and to the man who would become her husband, quietly binding her creative future to her private one in a way that felt less like coincidence and more like fate unfolding in its own time. Decades later, returning to that same fictional world felt almost surreal, like stepping back into a place you once lived and realizing the air still smells faintly familiar, even though you've become someone else entirely. It wasn't simply another installment, another production, another job on the calendar. It carried the weight of time, of history, of everything that had happened in the years between then and now. It wasn't just a sequel, it was a reunion, not only of castmates, but of lives that had expanded, changed shape, and intersected in ways that went far beyond the screen. The faces were older, the voices carried a slightly different texture, and the presence of memory sat quietly behind every familiar detail. She spoke openly about what that original film had done for her, not in a sentimental way, but with the clear-eyed awareness of someone who understood how a single moment can redirect an entire life. It altered her path, reshaped her career, and folded her personal world into her creative one in a way she never could have designed. And that was the point. It wasn't nostalgia for its own sake. It was recognition. The kind that comes when you realize certain experiences don't fade because they were famous, but because they were foundational. They imprint themselves on you, leaving fingerprints you still carry decades later, even if you don't think about them every day. For many viewers, though, the role that remains most vivid is not the one tied to a franchise or a cult classic, but the one rooted in something universal. A mother in crisis during the holidays, racing against impossible odds with her heart in her throat. In that film, she captured a particular kind of panic that feels almost physical, the terror of realizing something precious has been lost, and the relentless, desperate determination to make it right. She held fear, love, guilt, and fierce resolve in the same breath, and she made every second feel real. It wasn't melodrama. It was the raw urgency of motherhood imagined as a storm, fast, relentless, and focused on one thing only: getting back to her child. Audiences didn't just watch her run, they ran with her. They believed her not because the story was large, but because her emotions were precise and human. Years later, she spoke about that performance with the kind of honesty that made her even more beloved. She laughed about the fact that she hadn't been a mother at the time she filmed it, that she was building the character from instinct, empathy, and imagination rather than lived experience. She admitted she had argued over lines, pushing back on dialogue, insisting that a real mother would never say certain things. And then, with a smile that carried both humility and truth, she confessed that real life corrected her. Once she became a mother, her perspective shifted completely, and she realized motherhood isn't always neat, gentle, or perfectly measured. It's complicated. It's exhaustion. It's fear. It's love so intense it sometimes comes out wrong. The funny part wasn't that she'd been wrong. It was that she could admit it so openly, turning it into a lesson without ever making it sound like one. That blend of humility and humor revealed something deeper. Her craft didn't stop when the cameras stopped rolling. Life continued to refine her, and she allowed it to, quietly, naturally, letting experience deepen the way she understood the people she played. And then there was the bond she formed with the child actor in that film, something that could have easily faded into the polite distance that often follows a successful project. But it didn't dissolve with time. It followed them forward into adulthood, resurfacing at public moments and personal milestones, as if the connection had been sealed by something more than a contract. It wasn't forced. It wasn't performative. It felt real, like a thread that remained intact even when life pulled them in different directions. When he later honored her, his words were heartbreakingly simple. He thought there was more time. He wanted more. There's something devastating about that kind of honesty because it doesn't decorate the grief. It doesn't try to make the pain sound beautiful. It just tells the truth. That loss always arrives too early, and love always believes it will get one more chance. Sometimes grief doesn't need elaboration. Sometimes it only needs one sentence that feels like a door cracking open, letting you glimpse the full weight behind it, and his honesty said everything. Her talents, though, were never confined to one kind of performance or one type of screen. She extended far beyond live-action roles, carrying the same emotional precision into voice work, where she gave animated characters an inner life strong enough to feel real even without her face. That kind of work requires a different kind of skill, one that depends entirely on tone, rhythm, breath, and timing. You have to build a person out of sound alone. She could do it effortlessly, creating emotion that felt lived, rather than performed. She knew how to make a line sound like a thought forming in real time, like a feeling arriving unexpectedly, like a truth slipping out before it could be polished. That's why her voice roles never felt like just voice acting. They felt like full performances, complete, textured, human. She also moved seamlessly through genres and tones, never allowing herself to be boxed into a single identity. Comedy, drama, satire, family films, sharp-edged character work. She belonged everywhere, and she carried the same authenticity into each space. In mockumentary-style projects, she formed creative partnerships that felt so natural they blurred the line between performance and reality. Her chemistry with longtime collaborators wasn't something manufactured in a writer's room. It was built on trust, shared history, and an intuitive understanding that only years of working together can create. They could play off each other with a glance, a pause, a half-finished sentence. Scenes didn't feel written, they felt overheard. That lived-in quality became part of her magic, the ability to make even the strangest characters feel like people you might actually meet, the ability to make comedy feel like truth wearing a disguise. And that is why her work lasts, because it wasn't just funny. It wasn't just iconic, it was human. It carried the unmistakable sense that she was fully present in every moment, whether she was on a set, in a recording booth, or standing beside the people she loved. Some performers give you roles you remember. She gave you moments that feel like they belong to your own life, scenes you return to, lines you quote without thinking, laughter that arrives like comfort. And when someone like that is gone, the loss doesn't only live in the news. It lives in the sudden realization that a certain kind of presence, rare, warm, fearless, won't appear again in quite the same way. Later in her career, she stepped into a role that felt less like a reinvention and more like a revelation, one that reintroduced her to the world with unexpected force. The character was extravagant and theatrical, wrapped in grand gestures and carefully constructed confidence, yet beneath that surface lived a profound insecurity. She played a woman who clung to self-belief not because it came easily, but because it was the only thing keeping her upright. The performance was undeniably comedic, filled with sharp delivery and exaggerated flair, but it was also deeply vulnerable. There was pain behind the confidence, fear beneath the bravado, and survival stitched into every flourish. Audiences responded instantly, recognizing something rare in the character, a reflection of how many people move through the world performing strength while quietly holding themselves together. Recognition followed quickly and then all at once. Awards arrived, praise multiplied. A new generation discovered her work, yet she never carried success like entitlement. Instead, she seemed genuinely surprised by it, openly grateful and quietly amused by how long it had taken. There was no bitterness in her response, no sense of overdue correction, only appreciation that the work had found its audience when it did. Even in her final years, she refused to settle into comfort or repetition. She continued to stretch herself, drawn to roles that demanded something different, emotional exposure without theatrics, pain expressed in restraint rather than volume. She accepted performances that required stillness, honesty, and the courage to sit inside discomfort, reminding audiences that her range had always extended far beyond laughter. Comedy may have been her most visible gift, but it was never her only one. Those who worked alongside her spoke about her presence with a kind of reverence that went beyond admiration. They described how she elevated every room she entered, not through dominance or ego, but through attentiveness. She listened. She responded. She made the work feel important. Working with her wasn't just inspiring, it was grounding. She made people want to do better, not because she demanded it, but because she earned their respect simply by showing up fully and honestly. When news of her passing spread, the reactions carried a strikingly similar tone, no matter who they came from. People spoke of a light gone from the room, of a sudden quiet where laughter used to live, of the unmistakable feeling that something rare, something irreplaceable, had been lost. Many remembered how she once described the ideal creative environment, a place where everything felt alive, where no take was mechanical, where spontaneity and trust allowed truth to emerge naturally. It wasn't just a philosophy she applied to her work. It was how she moved through life. She believed in presence, in listening, in letting moments unfold instead of forcing them. That belief shaped her performances, her collaborations, and the way people felt in her company. Now the weight of her absence is undeniable. It settles slowly, revealing itself in small moments. When a familiar scene comes on, when a line lands with perfect timing, when laughter arrives unexpectedly and then catches in the throat. But alongside that weight is something just as powerful: endurance. What she left behind continues to breathe. Her performances still feel alive. Her timing still lands with the same precision. Her characters still comfort, amuse, and surprise even years later. She remains present in moments of laughter, in lines people can't forget, in scenes that feel impossibly human long after the credits roll. She isn't frozen in memory or confined to the past. She lives on in motion, through the stories she told, the people she touched, and the joy she made look so effortless that it almost felt like magic. If her work ever made you laugh, or made a hard day feel lighter, take 1 second to honor her legacy. Hit like so more people can find this tribute, subscribe for more story-driven retrospectives, and share this with someone who grew up watching her. Because the people who shaped our memories deserve to be remembered.